right, welcome back to another live stream. This is the Rational Wrestling Talk podcast. Hopefully, you guys can hear me well. Turn this up a little bit. Yeah, hopefully, y'all can hear me through this mic. Let's see who comes up in here. Yeah, so welcome back to another podcast. We're going to be talking about AEW, how it needs a reset, and once you pop in, make sure you hit the like button. Be civil and respectful in the chat. Otherwise you will be blocked if you are disrespectful, cussing up a storm. Just be civil and respectful. That's all I ask. But without further ado, let's get right into the topic. Because with AEW and what they're doing right now, it's not very interesting. It's not blowing no one away at the moment. I mean, in fact, all elite wrestling has been dry since 2022, right? Most will probably say it's been dry since CM Punk left, since Cody and Punk left. But once Punk left, you start to see a downward spiral in AEW and the overall product, and just a decline in viewership on top of that. I cannot take anything that they're doing seriously unless they start hitting the 1 million mark in viewership and ratings on a weekly basis, not just one show, but on a weekly basis. That is when I can begin to take them more seriously as a company. But they're barely just eclipsing 600,000, 700,000. That's pretty much their ceiling right now in viewership. And that's a crying shame, man. If you think about it, you think about the talent, you think about the wealth of talent they have on that roster. They can make it happen, putting on good TV episodes every week. They can put on the best matches every single week. They can do that. But it's not going to matter if you do not have character development and you don't have edgy storylines and edgy angles, storylines that gets people talking. And at this point, knowing what happened at Dynasty, which I did not watch Dynasty at all, wasn't finna pay $50-$60 to watch 10 to 12 matches on a pay-per-view that ultimately mean nothing. And I saw glimpses of the main event. It was not anything that blew my mind away. The finish was like, what the fuck just happened? They're gonna have to explain that one, right? And so their pay-per-views are starting to lack as well. And there was a point in time where for about 2 years, Dynamite, Collision were not very good. But the pay-per-views, once you got to the pay-per-views, okay, now we got something. All right, now we're starting to cook. There would be a couple of classic matches here and there on their pay-per-views, right? Like every match at one point would be delivering on pay-per-view. But now it's like the main events with Jon Moxley involved in them have been lackluster. And they've been pretty boring with him as the world champion. None of these world title matches that we've seen on these pay-per-views have been exciting at all. And it boggles my mind that Tony Khan, he listens to the feedback of fans and people that got a lot to say about his product. But I don't think he really pays attention to the feedback that he is getting. I just don't think he really cares that much, because we see a pattern in these episodes that he's really booking them for himself at the end of the day. And that's where he's going to go wrong. That's where that's going to be the biggest downfall for Tony Khan, is booking Dynamite in Collision for himself. So I don't know. But let's see. YouTube is not sending out no notifications. Nobody's in the chat yet. I'm about to wait till some people pop in the chat. If you do, make sure you like the live. Remember to be civil, respectful, otherwise you will be blocked. Those are the simple 2 rules of this chat, of this live stream. So I figure I go on live and talk about this, because it seems that everybody is done with All Elite Wrestling and just finished and tired of, putting all their faith in, believing that this company can be something. And we thought at one point it could be something. And it was a very good alternative to the WWE at a time where WWE was failing, where they were just a complete shitstorm. But they came back around. They started, gaining back momentum again. They started putting on not great, but solid episodes of Raw and SmackDown. Yeah, you've had your bad apples here and there. The PLEs have been very watchable for the WWE. And that's another thing too. When we talk about a reset, Tony Khan needs to cut down on the amount of matches they do on every pay-per-view. There is no reason why we should be having 10 to 12 matches on every pay-per-view. Now, they have about 8, 9 pay-per-views a year now. So we got Revolution, we got Dynasty, we got Double or Nothing, we got Forbidden Door. That's 4. We got All In, then All Out. I think All Out is first, then All In. And then you have Grand Slam, which I think is twice a year. It's about 6, 7. Then you got Wrestle Dream, and then you have Full Gear, and then World's End. So that's about 9, 10 pay-per-views per year. It was better. They were better off just sticking with 4 pay-per-views, 4 per year, because they were special. Then I can understand doing 10 matches for those 4 pay-per-views. But for 9, 10 pay-per-views a year and 12 matches, and your pay-per-views suck on top of that, no thank you. I'm not paying $60 for that. You can shove that $60 up your ass. That's not happening. But at the end of the day, we got to cut down these matches to at least 5 or 6. I mean, back in the day, the WWE used to have pay-per-views where you only get 7, 8 matches. But those matches meant something. And now it's only 4 or 5, which is perfect, because it shows you that not everybody can make it on the card. And with Tony Khan, he's playing this game of a participation trophy, where it's everybody can be part of the pay-per-view. Everybody on the roster can be on the pay-per-view. when there's no reason to have them on the pay-per-view in the first place because they don't have a storyline. They don't have an angle. They don't have nothing going on. Okay? So what makes them important enough to be on pay-per-view? With the WWE, you have to earn your way to be on the PLE. You gotta have something going on. Triple H is not just gonna shove you in a nothing match that had no build up. Just put you on there for the sake of, okay, you're on the roster, you're a good wrestler, so you deserve to be on the pay-per-view. No, that's just earning a participation trophy and not playing to win the first prize, first winner, the first place prize. Like, Tony Khan, all he's doing by doing these 10, 12 matches on every pay-per-view and like what, 3 fucking matches on the kickoff show, that shit got to stop too. You want to talk about reset? Get rid of the kickoff shows, all of them. There's no need to do a kickoff show. We don't care. No one's watching the kickoff in terms of like what matches you're going to have scheduled. No one cares. Those matches mean nothing on the kickoff show. Right? Who cares? They're meaningless. But Tony Khan, all he's doing is rewarding every wrestler with a participation trophy award. Which, no, if you're not good enough to make it on the pay-per-view, your ass shouldn't be on there. Point blank. If you're not in a bitter rivalry with somebody, if you're not in an interesting angle, you don't need to be on there. Start reducing these matches to about 7. That's it. Just 7. Give us 7 matches per pay-per-view. That's it. That's all we need. We don't need 12 matches. And then you wonder why the crowd is tired. You wonder why they're exhausted by like the 4th, 5th match. Because not every match has to be a 5-star match. It doesn't need to be. So I think it's at this point, we got to change up the format a little bit and reduce some of these pay-per-views. Get rid of at least 2. Okay, and I didn't like the fact that you had All Out and All In so close within 2 weeks of one another. It's like you didn't give it time to build up to the next show. Like 2 weeks of build up is not enough time. You need an entire month to build up to the next show, to the next pay-per-view. So it was better when they just had 4, which were what, like Revolution, Double or Nothing, All In, and then Full Gear. And that was it. That was when AEW was at its best. The shows meant something. Those pay-per-views meant something. You were excited to see those pay-per-views. Well, now they almost mean 0. Nothing anymore. Another thing that Tony Khan should be doing is get rid of some of the titles. Get rid at least 1 or 2 titles. Or at the very least, unify the Continental Championship and the International Championship. Combine, unify those titles. There's no need to have 2 of those belts. You got like about 3 mid-card belts at this point. You don't need that. Because why would the other wrestlers want to compete for the World Championship now? Now, I guess you can argue that Jon Moxley has the AEW Championship. He has it under a stronghold because he has it in a damn, a briefcase. So no one's going to really bother to challenge him for it. So they have the TNT title, they got the international title, the continental title, and I know I'm missing one more other belt, but I think that's it. The trios titles, they're great. You know, you can keep those around. Like, I think that's a good concept they have, is a trios championship. Just keep those around. The two women's belt, I think that's good enough right there. But this is where I would introduce a draft. Have a draft between Dynamite, Collision, divide the rosters in half. And then with Dynamite, you can have the AEW World Championship. You can have the AEW Women's title along with the Trios Championships and then the International title on Dynamite. So four belts on Dynamite. Altogether, they got like 8 belts. So on Collision, I would make the TNT Championship a world title. A world title. Your mid-card belt for Collision would be the Continental Championship. And then the TBS Championship would be on Collision. And then you have the AEW Tag Team titles on Collision. So therefore, if you want to catch the tag team division, you want to watch tag team wrestling, you got to watch Collision. If you want to see Mercedes Moné, she's the TBS champion, okay, you got to watch Collision on Saturdays. You can only watch her on Saturday nights. You know, if you want to see the trios, the trios champions, right? The Death Riders. You got to watch Dynamite. You got to go watch Dynamite on Wednesdays. You know, you want to see trios matches. Got to watch Dynamite. You want to see the Continental Classic. That will be exclusively on Collision. You know, I think that would be a decent enough idea to go with, considering that, like, this roster is just all over the place. And now Tony's getting to a point where he has to release talent because the roster is loaded. It's overcrowded. So I would just divide them at this point. What can go wrong in that? At least then, you have 4 championships on each show, and they're exclusive. You know, you can only catch the Death Riders on Wednesdays, and you can catch, tag team wrestling on Saturday nights. You know, you want to see certain wrestlers like Mercedes Moné or an Adam Cole. You got to watch Collision on Saturdays only. They're only going to be on Saturday nights. You know, you want to see Will Ospreay. Well, you got to watch Dynamite on Wednesdays from now on. And so, like, by doing that, by those shows being 2 hours each, rosters being divided, it gives more identity to every wrestler that is on each show now. It gives it more space. It's not as cluttered. It gives them more of an identity going forward to do it that way. Because when the draft was introduced in the WWE in 2002, you saw a lot of talent, really find their identity, based off what brand they were on. Like, you saw the very best of almost every talent from Raw and SmackDown every week, because they didn't need to be on every show every week. It's just they were exclusive on that brand only. And they used to do brand specific pay-per-views. Now, I don't know if I would do that for AEW. I mean, you could try, see what happens. I mean, but just having less matches on each pay-per-view would make it more important. You know what I'm saying? And I would just hire new writers. Tony Khan tries to write these shows by himself. I'm not sure if he does or not, but I can tell he's trying to wear a lot of hats right now, and that's not going to work. I think they need to hire former wrestlers that know the wrestling business a lot more than Tony Khan knows it. And hire real veterans that know this business very well to a T and get their input, start to, you know, see what's in their mind and kind of get their perspective of things and storylines and angles and how to book certain characters. You know, I don't think AEW at this point is at a point where they can't be repaired. I think they're definitely not beyond repair. There's some things that can be fixed, but it's not guaranteed that it's going to be successful, you know. But there's definitely some small things they can do to fix the shows overall. And the first thing they can do is divide the rosters. That's what I would do. Reduce the amount of the amount of matches they do on every pay-per-view. I would just go back to maybe 5 or 6 per year, if that. And so, yeah, if you're just now popping in the chat, make sure you give it a like. Remember to be civil, respectful. That's all. That's the only 2 rules I got for this live stream. Just be civil and respectful. That's it. But yeah. Well, how would you give AEW a reset? Like, what ideas would you have? Would you bring to the table on how you can make this product better and kind of save it from beyond repair? If you guys got any ideas, share them in the chat. Let's hear it. Because I personally do not want AEW to fail. I don't want them going out of business. I mean, AEW is the reason why Cody Rhodes came back, CM Punk came back. The reason why the WWE even stepped up their game in the first place. So AEW coming around, it means something. This company, yeah, it's to the shits right now, but there can be adjustments that can be made, and I think starting storylines and angles and not having much development, having subpar booking, anticlimactic finishes, or finishing the storyline too early, and having underwhelming finishes to the storylines and stuff. I think that just hinders the product overall. Like, they can start something major on a pay-per-view, then have an underwhelming follow-up the next week. And some of these feuds that they do, they just end them very early, and there's like no real follow-up with something that major happens on the pay-per-view. Like, okay, the Young Bucks cost Swerve the AEW World Title. Okay, that happened. Now what? What's going to come out of that? Is Swerve going to somehow mend fences with Hangman Adam Page, and they're going to fight the Bucks together? I mean, that would be pretty cool to do that. I mean, but I'm just looking for a payoff that's worthwhile. That's worth the while, That's worth the wait, I should say. But with the Death Riders angle, that to me had a great start to a very interesting start. Now it's just kind of coasting. And I can make a separate video on that and my thoughts and opinions on the Death Riders. But a lot of the factions they have, and that's another problem too. They got way too many factions to count. And they're just there just to be there. And there's no real purpose behind some of these factions. I think overall with AEW, they just lack clear direction, and they're definitely not booking long term. Like they're more booking on a short term scale, where they're just doing stuff week to week to week just to do it, you know. And there's no real thought into what they're doing, what they're trying to do, and how they're trying to execute. Like, the Death Riders angle, the execution has been terrible, lackluster. The Elite saga from last year, where the Young Bucks, Jack Perry, they united and took out Tony Khan. I mean, they had a good start, but it fell flat in the end. I mean, I don't think it ever really kicked off into second gear, that whole angle. It never did. It probably died by the second month. The only interesting those guys did was hit a pile driver on Tony Khan. That was it. That's about it. That's all that really happened. After that, it just fell flat. They made Okada look like more of a joke. He's been a parody of himself pretty much. Booking him like AEW's version of Ron Simmons pretty much by just saying the word bitch in every promo, like how Ron Simmons said damn after every anything that was said that was like, wait, what the fuck did he just say? And then he would follow up by saying damn. I mean, that was actually pretty funny though. But with Okada, it was just like, okay, like very awkward. So yeah, there definitely needs to be more direction with the characters and the angles. Like, okay, I can see they got cooking up right now FTR heel turn, which I think they need it, by the way. They definitely need an adjustment because they've been stale and they've been riding the coattails of Cope, aka Edge, for a while now. So they definitely need a switch up in their character. So we'll see where that goes. Obviously, it's heading toward a collision between FTR, Edge, and Christian reuniting. Which, look, I'm not excited about Christian, him and Edge reuniting and Christian being a face again. I still think they should have had him cash in that match with him and Cope and Moxley at at Revolution, and Christian should have won. He should have gotten that win and won that title. But to turn him babyface, it's something I don't really care to see. Like I don't really care to see a Cope and Christian reunion, because it's like I don't trust them enough to execute it properly and for them to book it the right way. I don't trust Tony Khan on how they're going to play this whole thing out week to week. Nor do I trust Cope, because he might have full creative control of this storyline, which you never know how that can turn out. Some of these wrestlers gaining full creative control, that's another problem right there too. Another hindrance for AEW. And this is where Tony Khan is being, soft as a boss, not putting his foot down, not laying down the law, not setting order as the boss, just being a doormat for a lot of these wrestlers that are in the main event scene. And a lot of these wrestlers that are in the main event scene, or they're veterans in the game, like Chris Jericho, he gets full creative control, and Jon Moxley, those are the two main ones. They can snap their finger and say, I want this to happen, I want that to happen, and Tony Khan will say, done, I'll make it happen, without any real pushback. I think Tony Khan will give his input, but I don't think he'll be the one to turn it down and say, nope, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this instead of your idea. And Vince would do that a lot. He would put a lot of his input in how he wanted a storyline to go. And his idea would be a lot better than the wrestler's idea. There's a reason Vince never gave guys like Edge or Chris Jericho full creative control, or guys like, Randy Orton or John Cena. He always had the last say. And his input is the one that mattered more than his talent. And having full creative control does not mean that the storyline is going to be, A1. It doesn't mean that, this whole angle is going to blow me away. It's going to be good shit, when it can turn out to be a shitstorm. It can turn out to be lackluster and underwhelming. It can turn out to be the worst storyline ever, the worst gimmick ever, or worst angle, which seems to be a pattern for AEW now, because these guys have full creative control and nothing good has actually came out of it. Like, real talk. So that's the worst that can happen for AEW, is the wrestlers running the asylum and them getting the full creative control. Them pretty much saying what's going to happen on the show when it should be structured on what's going to happen. Not everyone going into business for themselves. And so that definitely has to stop. The full creative control mess, that needs to end today. We're talking about having a reset for All Elite Wrestling. No wrestler, I don't care if they're in the main event, I don't care if they've been here for a long time, they should not ever have any creative control of their character. Leave that to the creative team. Leave that to the writers. If they know what they're doing, let them cook. Okay? Leave that to the wrestlers backstage, their producers that have great minds in the business. Let their minds be picked on how this storyline should go, how this angle should be executed. Because we look at the learning tree stuff with Chris Jericho and Big Bill and the bounty hunter, Keith, whatever his damn name is, that has fallen flat. And I hope that ends soon, because that's probably the worst that Chris Jericho has ever been viewed in AEW. Like, seriously, that gimmick has failed. Fell completely flat. And people have given up on the Death Riders already within like 3 months. Everyone's sick and tired of the Death Riders. And that's more likely Jon Moxley getting full creative control of that entire angle. So, yeah, I'm going to end it off here. I don't see anyone really popping in this chat, in this live, but, I just wanted to experiment doing a live stream like this on StreamYard and, giving my thoughts and opinions on AEW as a product, as a whole, and how they can reset this whole thing, because that's what they need. They just need a reset. There's nothing wrong with a little reset, kind of starting over, starting from scratch, getting a clean slate on things. AEW can get better. They can turn this around, but I don't think they're going to turn around anytime soon. It seems to me that there's like a new angle in the works with the Bucks and the Death Riders joining forces. Look, your two biggest angles from last year spilling over to this year, I don't see how that's going to do any good numbers. And I don't see how that's going to save the whole product. And what good can come out of that? I think it's going to be a clusterfuck. All I'm really foreseeing in the future with that whole thing is anarchy in the arena type of match at Double or Nothing. So most likely the Young Bucks will probably join forces with, the three members of the Death Riders, Claudio, Pac, and Wheeler, like 5 of those guys right there taking on 5 other men with Swerve, Hangman Page, and 3 other dudes. I don't know who, but one thing I can say that I would be looking forward to is the return of Eddie Kingston. I think with the history of Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston have, I think that's a match they should do in the future. I think a lot of people would be excited for that match because of the history and the fact that Eddie Kingston, to me, is a good talker. And I think he has that entertainment factor about himself. And he definitely has some charisma. Yeah, even though as a wrestler he looks like shit, but at the same time, he's a character. And last time I checked, AEW needs more genuine, relatable characters on the show. And Eddie Kingston fits that. He fits the bill pretty perfectly right there. So, I mean, that'll probably be the only thing that I'll be looking forward to. The other thing is when this whole thing is over. Honestly, when this whole angle is over and done with, we move on to what's next. Yeah, that'll be the most interesting part about that when it's over and done with. So, yeah, I don't see how that's gonna garner any huge numbers or do the viewership any good. I mean, you got the best roster right now. Like, seriously. And they cannot hit 1 million views. They cannot hit 1 million in the ratings. And so once they do that, I'll take AEW a little bit more seriously. But if they keep, if they keep getting a low number every single week going forward, there's no way I'm taking this company seriously. There's no way. At this stage, they should be at the 1 million mark. There's no excuses for AEW at this point. So, yeah, if you enjoyed this topic, this live, make sure you smash the like button. More content is to come. This is another edition of the Rational Wrestling Talk podcast. And with that being said, hopefully y'all have a good day. Thank y'all for viewing, and I'm out, and peace.